Hello friends, a warm welcome to all my second year BCom students. This is our macroeconomics introduction lecture. This year we will be studying business economics macro paper. Last year we had studied business economics micro. To begin with, we will revise the contents that we had studied in our previous classes, such as what is economics, what are the two main branches of economics, and so on. So, as we have studied, economics, which is a social science, is mainly a study of unlimited wants and limited resources. We have studied that the resources which are limited, they are multiple in uses, and thus and because the wants are unlimited, it leads to economic problems, and therefore the study of economics becomes very important. Further, we also had studied that there are two main branches of economics, namely micro and macroeconomics. As we know, microeconomics is mainly deals with the study of individual units or individual variables, and whereas macroeconomics is the study of aggregates, or in short we say that it is the study of entire economy or whole economy, or it is the study of total. We'll be discussing the meaning of the term macro. Macro, as the word, is derived from the Greek word makros, which means large. Thus, we say macroeconomics is the study of relations between broad economic aggregates, or in short, it is the study of aggregate variables. Macroeconomics deals with the variables which are aggregate in nature, such as total income, total employment, total production, total investment, general price level, and so on. There are few definitions defined by few of the economists which we put across. The first definition discussed over here is defined by Professor Ackley. He defines macroeconomics as the study of forces and factors that determine the levels of aggregate production, employment, and prices in an economy and their rates of change over the time. There's another definition defined by Professor Kenneth Boulding, where he defines macroeconomics as the one which is not concerned with individual quantities, but it is concerned with the aggregates of the quantities such as national income, general price level, national output, etc. So here Kenneth Boulding refers that microeconomics is not the one which deals with the individual units, such as the individual income or the price of a single commodity, or the output produced by a single firm, and so on, but it is the one which deals with the national income, the general or overall price level, national output. To summarize, we can say that macroeconomics is that branch of economics which collects the facts and figures from all quantities of given economic unit, and it takes the average of facts and figures to know the trend or tendency of the aggregate variable, and finally it helps in formulation of plans, policies, and programs which are meant for solving economic problems of all units. Therefore, students, we study until now that macroeconomics is nothing but the study of aggregates, which mainly takes into account all the quantities of the economic units in an economy. It collects the actual facts and figures, and it takes the average of these figures, and thus it helps in formulating various plans and policies for the policy makers. There are few features, or we'll be studying the nature of the subject macroeconomics. As we have already described in the meaning and definition part, that macroeconomics is the economics of aggregates. It is thus the feature of macroeconomics that it deals with the aggregate variables. It does not deal with the individual units, but it mainly deals with all the aggregate variables such as total income, total output, the general price level, and so on. Therefore, a very basic feature of macroeconomics says that macroeconomics is the economics of aggregates. The next feature also describes that macroeconomics mainly discusses the trends or the tendencies of economic forces. As we have just now described the various economic variables, macroeconomic variables mainly, macroeconomics helps us in understanding the trends or the tendencies of all these economic variables or forces. For an example, we say macroeconomics helps us in analyzing to know the trends of price level. For example, we say it helps us in knowing whether the price level is increasing or whether it is remaining constant or whether it is decreasing. Thus, it can be applied for all the remaining macroeconomic variables, and thus it helps in analyzing the trends or tendencies of economic forces. The next feature says that after analyzing the various trends or tendencies of economic forces, it also helps the government and the policy makers in formulating various plans, policies, and programs. As we have already mentioned earlier, that macroeconomics is based on actual facts and figures. So we collect the actual facts and figures from the real economy. It gives us the idea about the economic variables and their trends, and thus it helps the government and the policy makers in formulating various plans, policies, and programs. The next very important and a very distinct feature of macroeconomics is that we say that money is used as an unit of measurement. Dear friends, in microeconomics, as we said that it deals with individual units, considering the price of an individual output or the output produced by a single firm or an industry was much more easier. But in macroeconomics, where we say that it is the study of aggregates, aggregating the total output of an economy in their physical quantities is not possible. It would be very weird to add n number of different units of commodities that are produced in an economy where the unit of measurement is not the same. Thus, it becomes very important in macroeconomics to have a common unit of measurement because it would be very weird, as I mentioned, to add the physical quantities of different commodities that are produced. Just for an example, adding the units of computers, the units of books, the units of pens, pencils, apples, wheat. All these are the different commodities that are produced in an economy whose unit of measurement is different. So, adding them in their physical quantities is not possible. Therefore, there is a need of a common unit of measurement, and thus we use money as a common unit of measurement. So, how money helps in becoming a common unit of measurement? Because every commodity or every service that is offered commodity that is produced is expressed in terms of money. So we have a money which is used as a common unit of measurement. So thus it becomes very easier for us to add the value of all these commodities and the services which are produced with the help of money, and that is how we also derive to the figures like national income or gross domestic product. Therefore, a very important feature of macroeconomics is that money is used as a common unit of measurement. Another very important feature of macroeconomics is that income is acting as a link between aggregate demand and aggregate supply. In our previous class, we had studied law of demand and law of supply, which were commonly ruled by one common variable, that was price. But in case of macroeconomics, it is not the price, but it is the income which determines and which acts as a link between the two important macroeconomic variables, that is the aggregate demand and the aggregate supply. So any change in income levels would determine the change in aggregate demand as well as the aggregate supply. Thus we say that income and not price is a link between aggregate demand and aggregate supply in case of macroeconomics. The next very important feature of macroeconomics, it says that the basis of study of macroeconomics is the actual facts and figures which are collected from the real economy. Okay, so here we say that it is not just any random figures or not any vague figures that we collect, but the analysis of macroeconomics is based on the actual facts and figures that are collected from the economy. So therefore we say the study of macroeconomics is based on the facts and figures. The next very important feature, which is also a distinction between micro and macroeconomics, is that macroeconomics mainly deals with the general equilibrium, whereas in microeconomics we had studied that the equilibrium is usually a partial equilibrium because it takes into account only the individual economic units, whereas macroeconomics, it mainly studies about the general equilibrium. So that is again a very important feature of macroeconomics. The next feature mentions that macroeconomics seeks to investigate the causes of economic changes. Okay, as we have mentioned earlier, that macroeconomics deals with various macroeconomic variables. It also deals with the changes, the rate of changes in these variables. So thus we say that macroeconomics, it seeks to investigate what are the causes of economic changes in an economy, and thus it helps further in formulating as well as implementing various plans, policies and programs for the economy. The last feature of macroeconomics says that it also deals with the allocation of resources among competing firms. In the introduction, as we had mentioned, economics mainly is a study which deals with the unlimited wants and limited resources. As it is true for individuals, it is also true for the macro units, where we say that there are n number of firms, unlimited number of firms, which are based on the limited resources. So thus it becomes very important for macroeconomics to allocate the limited resources amongst the various competing firms. So these are all the important features, or we say that it is the nature of the subject macroeconomics. So this is all about the introduction to the concept of macroeconomics. So in this part we had studied mainly what is micro and macroeconomics, a brief review. We had discussed about the derivation of the term macro. We have discussed the meaning and definitions of macroeconomics and the features of macroeconomics. Thank you.